Welcome to Quiet Horror. Tonight, I'll be sharing 3 unsettling original stories with you. Turn off the lights, get comfortable, and let's begin. The first story is called Tuesday. Someone married me to a dead man without my permission. In Korea, there is a wedding held for people who are already dead. It's called 영혼 결혼식, which means a spirit marriage. When someone dies young and unmarried, some families arrange a wedding for them to another deceased unmarried person of opposite sex. 2 grieving households come together, and in place of a bride and groom who can't stand at the altar because they are dead, 2 small dolls are dressed in wedding clothes to take their place. They work as a stand-in body for a person who no longer has one. They carry out a real wedding ceremony where they take photos and make offerings. Sometimes families go as far as filing an actual marriage registration for the dead. The families find comfort in knowing their deceased family member won't be alone in the afterlife. They say that in the old tradition, dying unmarried leaves something unfinished. A spirit can't settle, can't rest, can't move on to where it's supposed to go. So this spirit wedding isn't really just for the dead person's happiness. It's to stop them from staying. I didn't know any of this, and by the time I learned about it, it was already too late for me. This is the story of how I found out someone had married me to a dead man without my knowledge, and what I had to do to try to get out of it. I met a guy named Jimin on a Tuesday. We kept bumping into each other on Tuesdays for a few weeks before he asked me out, so he started calling me Tuesday. It was a stupid pet name, and I loved it. I thought it was cute. We dated for almost 2 years. He was sweet in a way that made my friends roll their eyes. He used to send me text every morning and remember even the smallest things I said. He also had this habit of running his thumb along my eyebrows slowly, like he was smoothing something out. He treated me like a princess every single day. The problem was his mother. She was pretty intense, calling him 6-7 times a day. She picked out his clothes for a job interview when he was 31. She cried, actually cried, the one time I brought up moving in together. Jimin just laughed it off and said, "She's just protective." He would always say that he was all she had. I loved him, and I know he loved me, but I knew I could never live with a crazy mother-in-law. Eventually, I ended things with him. He was upset, but he understood. 6 weeks later, he was dead. A car accident, late at night, on the road he drove all the time. I found out from a mutual friend in a text message. I went to the funeral. His mother didn't speak to me. She just stared at me the entire time from across the room. She was obviously grieving. I was too. But the way she looked at me made me feel uncomfortable. But I didn't think much of it. I figured I'd never see her again anyway. Then I got a rash about 4 months later. It was a small red patch on the base of my ring finger, left hand. I thought it was some kind of an allergy, so I put cream on it. But it didn't go away. If anything, the rash got more defined into a shape of a ring, even though I didn't wear any ring. My dermatologist looked at it and joked that it looked like a wedding ring. She thought it was a strange place to have a rash, but she said it should go away with stronger cream in 2 weeks. Around the same time, I started sleeping badly. I'd wake up in the middle of the night feeling that someone was lying next to me. There was no sound or shadow or anything, but I felt an odd sense of weight and warmth. Somehow, it reminded me of how Jimin used to sleep, with his one arm slung over me. It was creepy, but every time I told myself it was grief or stress, or the kind of thing your brain does when you lose someone. One night, I even heard it. It was barely audible, but right against my ear, I thought I heard him whisper, "Tuesday." I told myself I must have dreamt it. It only happened once, so I didn't want to think about it. But then, I also started hearing crying sounds. At first, I thought it was a neighbor's baby, but the problem was, I asked around and found out that there was no baby in my building. And it didn't sound like it was coming through a wall. It sounded like it was in my room. I thought I was going crazy. I didn't know what to do. Then one day, one of Jimin's friend, his name was Namjoon, messaged me out of nowhere and asked to meet for coffee. I hadn't seen him since the funeral. At the cafe, Namjoon told me something disturbing. He said that Jimin's mother apparently performed the spirit wedding for his dead son. Normally, it's between two spirits, a dead man and a dead woman, arranged like a business deal between grieving families. But that wasn't what Jimin's mother did. She couldn't stand the idea of her son spending eternity with a stranger. She wanted him with someone she'd actually loved. So she used my name. I don't remember much of the rest of the conversation. All I could think about was how I kept feeling like there was someone in my bed every night, and the rash shaped exactly like a ring around my finger. I just couldn't believe that Jimin's crazy mother did this to me. I honestly didn't know what to do, but I happened to have a coworker who was very superstitious. So when I mentioned to her that I kept feeling a weird presence in my home, she recommended a mudang, which is like a Korean spirit medium or a shaman. My coworker claimed that this mudang was very capable. She swore by her, saying that this shaman fixed something in her family nobody else could explain. The mudang's shop was small, above a busy pharmacy. It smelled like incense and smoke. The moment I walked in, even before I sat down, the mudang said quietly, "You shouldn't have married him." I stood there in the doorway with my mouth open, and she just looked at me, indifferent, like she knew what I was going through. And to my shock, she'd confirmed everything. She said that indeed a marriage ritual was carried out, but in a wrong way. Instead of two spirits, it was done between a dead man and a living woman, me. And now, Jimin was attached to me. The mudang explained that he wanted the life he didn't get to have. I told her about how I kept hearing the baby crying. She explained, "He's trying to build a family. He's attracting baby spirits to you too." I asked her how to stop it. She said the only way to get free was to carry out a proper spirit ritual for Jimin. He needed a bride who belonged with the dead, a woman who died young and alone. If I found one and performed the ritual for him, he might release me. It could send him where he was supposed to go in the first place. I went to the graveyard the next day and walked around. The headstones had the names, dates of birth, and death. It took a while to find a young woman's grave, but I did eventually. A woman, 26, was buried 9 years ago. Her grave was near the back of the cemetery, and there was even a small photo set into the headstone. She looked a little like me, and I didn't know if that was a good thing or not, but I've decided not to think about it too hard. I did what the Murang told me to do. I got the things I needed and went to the woman's grave alone at night. I carried out the ritual just as she told me. I arranged everything just right, and I said the words. Maybe I was imagining things, but I felt like the temperature around me dropped a little, and the rash around my finger seemed to burn a bit more. I almost believed it was working. But then I heard footsteps behind me. I turned around, and it was her, Jimin's mother. That crazy woman stood at the edge of the grave with a strange expression. "So it worked, didn't it?" she said. "I've been following you, and I can tell it worked. He's here." She was almost smiling. "He isn't alone. He wants to be with you. It has to be you." Suddenly, she lunged and broke the offering table with her hands before I could stop her. The way she looked and acted, it scared me. I was afraid that she might hurt me, so I ran. I don't remember how, but somehow I got home that night. For a while, nothing happened, and I let myself believe that it was over. I did complete the ritual before that crazy woman showed up, so it must have worked, right? The rash faded first, not overnight, but slowly until it was just a faint discoloration that was barely visible. And the nights got quiet. I stopped feeling the warmth. I stopped hearing the baby crying. I started to sleep peacefully. And 6 months later, I met someone. His name was Jaewon. He was kind, a little awkward, and really nerdy. He was nothing like Jimin, which I think was why I was drawn to him. He made me feel safe. About a month in, Jimin's mother called me. I hadn't heard from her since the cemetery. I almost didn't pick up, but I did. Her voice was calm, almost happy. She said she was glad things had settled down for me. She said everything worked out for the best in the end, because I found another way. I didn't understand what she meant. I asked her what she was talking about, but she didn't answer me. Instead, there was a pause, and then she said, "I heard you got a new boyfriend." Before I could answer, she added, "Take good care of my boy." And she hung up. I sat there holding the phone for a long time. I told myself it was just a strange, lonely woman being strange. Grieving mothers say odd things, right? I didn't want to let this disturbing woman ruin my life again, so I let it go. Then, 2 months later, it happened. Jaewon and I were on the couch in my apartment. I was ranting about something frustrating at work, and he was listening patiently. Then, suddenly, he reached over without really thinking about it and ran his thumb along my eyebrow, slowly, like he was smoothing my frown out. He whispered, "Everything's gonna be okay. Don't worry, Tuesday." I froze. My mind went blank for a moment before I stuttered. What did you just call me?" He shrugged and tried to laugh it off. He looked at me lovingly, and I just sat there staring at him. The second story is called The Apartment. When I was in university in Korea, I had a classmate named Mina. We ended up in most of the same classes, so we became friends. She was nice, and I liked her, but I always noticed that she might be a little jealous of me. Whenever I did well on an exam or a guy noticed me, something shifted in her expression for just a moment. But it was so subtle, and her bright smile would return so quickly that I told myself I was imagining it. Then one semester, everything fell apart at once. My landlord gave me notice with almost no warning. I had just 2 weeks to find a new place to live. I was a student with very little money, and affordable housing near campus was impossible to find. I looked everywhere and found nothing. I was starting to panic, wondering if I was going to be homeless. That's when Mina offered to help. She said she was moving back to her parents' house, which was news to me. Her apartment was close to campus, the rent was low, and she said she'd rather sublet it to someone she knew than deal with the penalty for breaking the lease early. She said she was going to leave all the furniture behind, which was perfect for me. I wouldn't even need to buy anything. It felt like the solution to every problem I had. I accepted without hesitation, and I moved in on a Saturday. For the first few days, everything seemed fine. The apartment was small but comfortable. I was just so relieved to have a place, but by the end of the first week, I started sleeping badly. I kept waking up at 2 or 3 in the morning, screaming from nightmares. Sometimes, it felt like I wasn't even sleeping, I was still having a nightmare. It always started the same. I would be lying in the bed in the dark, and slowly I would become aware that things were gathering around me. Dark figures, too many to count, pressing in from every side of the bed. I couldn't move or speak. I could only lie there and feel the weight of them getting heavier and heavier until I woke up gasping. I started doing badly in class. I couldn't concentrate, couldn't retain anything I studied. I started losing weight. I got sick twice in the same month, and my doctor couldn't figure out why. My friends told me I looked pale. I kept thinking there was something wrong with the apartment, maybe mold, or bad air, or something I couldn't see. So I cleaned everything, but nothing changed. The nightmare came every night without exception. Then one night, my grandmother appeared in the dream. She'd been dead for 3 years, but in my dream, she stood right next to the bed. She looked the same as I remember her, except she looked frightened. I've never seen her like that before. She was pointing at the bed, directly beneath where I was lying, and she was saying something I couldn't hear. I could see her lips moving, but there was no sound. She kept pointing at the bed, kept trying to tell me something, her face getting more urgent. And then I woke up. I sat in the dark for a very long time after that. In the morning, I pulled the mattress off the bed frame. I don't know why, but I felt a strange urge to do it. I don't know exactly what I was looking for. Maybe nothing. Maybe I was just going crazy. I checked the underside of the mattress and found nothing. Then, I looked at the bed frame itself, running my hands along the wooden frame, and taped to the underside of it, where no one would ever see, was a small piece of yellow paper covered in red ink. I knew immediately what it was. It was bujak, which was like a form of Korean talisman. I had grown up seeing it in temples, on door frames, in my grandmother's kitchen. These were used for protection, for good luck, or for warding off bad things. But this one felt different. I couldn't understand what the symbols meant, but I somehow knew that they didn't mean anything good. I took it to a mudang, which is like a Korean spirit medium or shaman. She looked at it without touching it, and then she looked up at me. She said that this particular bujak was designed to invite spirits in, not to protect the person sleeping in that bed, but to attract evil to cause harm. I moved out that weekend. The nightmares stopped the first night I slept somewhere else. My grades came back. I finally felt like myself. I never confronted Mina. When I told her I was moving out, she was quiet for a moment. Then she asked, "Was there something wrong with the apartment?" The way she asked that question seemed strange to me. Her voice was softer than usual, almost nervous, and I couldn't tell if she was worried about me or worried that I had found something. Did she leave because she went through the same thing? Or I thought about telling her the truth and confront her, but I just couldn't. I kept thinking about that piece of paper hidden under the mattress, taped so carefully underneath the frame where I would never think to look. Someone had put it there, and I didn't know who. And also, maybe I just didn't want to know. The final story is called The Dancer. I met Megan in my second year of university. We were in the same literature class, and she started sitting next to me one day and just never stopped. She was a ballet dancer. She said she trained since she was 4. There was something about her that was a little too intense. I didn't dislike her, but I never felt really comfortable around her. Unfortunately, she attached herself to me for some reason. She would text me throughout the day, show up at the cafe I liked, and saved me seats without being asked. Before long, she claimed that we were best friends. I was never rude to her. I just tried to keep a certain distance, but she kept closing it. The thing she said most often was that we were going to be together forever. It wasn't a question, but a statement. She sounded so sure about it that it made me feel uncomfortable. She said it with a sweet smile, but for some reason, it always sounded threatening to me. And she'd always blow me a kiss whenever we said goodbye. It made me feel awkward. I never knew how to respond. Then, she died suddenly in the spring of our 3rd year. It was a freak accident. She slipped on wet stairs outside the art building and hit her head. She was gone before the ambulance arrived. I found out about it through a group chat and sat with the news for a long time before I felt anything. At her funeral, her mother held my hands and told me that Megan talked about me all the time. She said I was Megan's closest friend. I smiled and said she was a wonderful person because I didn't know what else to say. I'm ashamed to admit it, but I felt a little relieved. She always managed to make me feel uneasy, and now I was free. But then the dreams started. It was the same nightmare every time. In it, I would see Megan standing in my kitchen at night, wearing her ballet outfit, her hair pulled back. She wouldn't say much. Instead, she would do a long ballet dance for me. Afterward, she would just look at me with the same intense expression and say quietly, "I told you we'll always be together." I would wake up unsettled because it felt so real, but I kept telling myself it was just a dream. The problem was, it wouldn't stop. It continued every single night. Always in my kitchen, always the same ballet routine. I watched it so many times that I ended up memorizing it. And I started noticing things when I was awake too. A feeling of being watched in empty rooms, waking up exhausted no matter how much I slept. Sometimes, just being in my own kitchen made me feel overwhelmed and terrified, like someone was standing just behind me. I felt like I was losing my mind, but there was nothing I could do. Then one day, I got a notification that my pet cam storage was full. I set up a camera in the kitchen months ago to keep an eye on my cat during the day when I was out. It records whenever there's movement, so there was always a backlog to clear out. I never bothered checking the nighttime clips because I assumed it was just my cat wandering around or maybe me getting up to use the bathroom. But before I started deleting, I noticed something. The nighttime recording from the past few weeks were massive. There were hours of footage, night after night, which didn't make any sense. My cat mostly slept through the night, so she had never triggered that much footage before. I clicked on the oldest one. The timestamp showed 2 a.m. For a second, the kitchen on the screen just sat there, empty, lit only by the stove light. Then, I walked into frame. It was me. My pajamas, my hair, my own kitchen. I watched myself stop in the center of the room, stand there, and then slowly begin to dance. In the video, I was dancing ballet. My back was straight, my arms precise. There was no hesitation in my movement. But the problem was, I've never danced ballet in my life. And I recognized the choreography instantly. It was the same routine Megan had been dancing for me every night in my dreams. My hands were shaking so badly, but I kept watching. I fast-forwarded through the footage, staring at myself on screen, dancing alone in the dark. It was me, but it wasn't me. Then, near the end of the clip, she stopped. On the screen, I turned slowly towards the camera. I stood completely still, looking directly into the lens. Then, I watched myself raise my hand slowly to my lips. And on the screen, I saw myself blow a kiss at the camera. There was no doubt that the person in the footage was me. It was my body. It was my face. But this definitely wasn't me. If this story stayed with you, there's more waiting. Subscribe to Quiet Horror.